conference in Michigan was 2002, RubyCon 4. Anyone go to RubyCon? Any RubyCon? Okay, so RubyCon is like 10 years ago or so what we have today with Converge and BSides Detroit. And so I've been going to security conferences in Michigan for 14 years now. And aside from that, of course, other places in other cities, states, countries, etc. So hopefully looking at a really big picture from those years and trying to point out some things that I think we still have some room to work on. So there are some tweets in this that are not redacted. They're from people. You can see who the people are. They're not meant to pick on that person or those organizations or the places they represent. It's simply because they illustrate a point of view that I'm trying to make a point on, and nothing else. So don't think I'm beating up certain people. I don't think anyone in this room is actually up there, but just in case. And you know, this is definitely not there's a reason that it's my personal email up here. This does not represent my employer, initiatives I'm part of, groups I associate with, or maybe any of you. So we'll find out. So hopefully I've met some of you over the past few years, events like this or other events around the area. I work at Rapid7. I talk way too much, as most of you can attest to. I've done some cool things. Recently, I was in Washington, D.C. to testify for the federal government to try to get a security researcher exemption for DMCA. And if you do security research, you probably know what DMCA is, or if you just are a citizen of the United States, you probably know what DMCA is. So we're trying to work pretty hard, and hopefully by December we will have that exemption. Fingers crossed. I recently published a book on two-factor authentication. I'm a big IoT security research and overall security kind of advocate. So I have an organization called Build It Securely that Zach Lanier-Quine, who spoke last year at Converge keynote. And then MySec has been a cool thing since BSides 1, if you will. Spent some time at EMU. And then more importantly than anything else, Green Day and Weezer at karaoke. Maybe we can get that going today. Who knows? So, that's Chris Zub, by the way. He hangs out in MySec. So how I'm going to define these, and certainly no definition will ever appease everyone. But what I look at, and kind of what I refer to the scene as, is what we call the information security community, right? The scene is old school lingo, is really more hacker culture lingo. Information security community is really kind of what things are today, right? The hacking scene has kind of been rolled up into this bigger thing. There are certainly holdouts that will say, oh, the hacking scene's this, it's different from InfoSec community. Yeah, it's a big umbrella, and then hacking scene is somewhere probably inside of there. But that's the culture, the relationships, what we feel about ourselves as a community, the projects, the initiatives we do, and then everything else kind of falls into the profession. How we get paid to do what we do in InfoSec, the kinds of standards, regulations, laws that we have to deal with to do what we do in InfoSec. The serious stuff versus the fun stuff is another way to look at this. So that's kind of my breakdown for semantics today, and hopefully we stay a little bit true to that. So here's where your hard hat should probably get put on if you don't like things that are very honest. So one thing that I've noticed in the last, let's say, 14, 15 years just in this area, but in InfoSec in general, we've really gone to a point where if you grew up in like the 90s or the 80s and you were on BBSs, you were on hacking forums, you were on IRC channels, it was about making your impact. It was about doing something to be part of a community. People would actually make you submit exploits. They would make you submit white papers. They would make you submit presentations for review before you could present them. We had a really high bar for inclusion. And I think it's great that we want to invite people and create advocates and bring new people in. And I think that's always been kind of the purpose of the scene or the InfoSec community. But I really think we've lowered the bar super low that if you look at conferences year over year, the same content, a low level, we have very few really deeply technical talks anymore. If you look at RubyCon 1 through 5, and you look at most of those talks in there, you would be shocked at how technical content used to be within the Michigan InfoSec community. John Erickson, who wrote the book Hacking the Art of Exploitation, which a few of you probably own, it's a fantastic book, and really kind of the first book back in 2003 that really touched on the topic of exploitation. He delivered a talk at, I think, RubyCon 5 that was about polymorphic shellcode, When was the last time you saw a talk in this community about something even close to the idea of polymorphic shellcode, right? We've kind of really taken ourselves down a notch, and that's not to say people are getting worse at what they do. I think we just have a really low standard of what we expect people to do. So I want to see kind of that raise up, but we'll talk more about that. And the other thing that I think has happened for positives and negatives is conferences. You used to go to a conference once or twice a year. You would work on a project for 6 months or a year and then present that as like, this is my big thing. I worked on this, I killed myself, I stayed up night after night after night to do this. And now we just kind of go, oh, hey, I got accepted to one of the 9,000 conferences, one of the 9,000 cities that have a conference like every 2 days. And we give the same talk. The barrier to entry again for CFP is super low. No one's really trying that hard because guess what? You don't have to try hard. You don't have to really raise the bar for yourself because no one's raising it for you. And we'll talk more about that too. Profession-wise, we've got a lot against us. We've got a lot that's been the same way for 10, 15, 20 years, but it's only getting actually a little bit worse. So I talked about DMCA a little bit. We've seen some ugly things happen with CFAA against researchers or people at least claiming to be researchers. Wassenaar is this whole new big shit show that we're dealing with crazy weaponization of exploits and ugly things like that. Crypto wars are back. We thought we were done with these in the 90s. They're back, which is super interesting. And then the general cease and desist, lawsuits against researchers. IOActive had a researcher get a DMCA complaint just about 2 months ago. So this stuff's alive and well, and we're still getting kind of beaten down for the kind of work we want to do, the kind of advancement we want to see. And the last part is having taught at a university that some of you probably went to, and also kind of working in the community, hiring people, having interns within the state and beyond. InfoSec skill sets are really the education and training you are getting for most InfoSec right now is going to be irrelevant if it's not already irrelevant. And what I mean by that is the people that went to school 10 years ago, that got comp sci degrees, that understand functional topics, or went to business school even, and got a business degree, and they're in InfoSec today, those people have knowledge and skills that are going to be continued to be needed, right? The people that go to school, they learn a little bit about SQL injection, and then they learn SQL map. They learn a little bit about assembly, and then they get Metasploit. Those people are going to be automated out of a job if they already aren't. There's research from Carnegie Mellon. There's research from MIT. There are projects that will literally do that job, automated, litmus tested, and actually basically put a report out that you as an analyst would put out. So what are we doing? Are we actually making the next generation of security researchers? Are we making the next generation of security professionals? Or are we making people that are basically like built-in obsolescence? And I think that's what's happening. I don't think we have enough of a skill set where you're basically going to get pushed out of a job before you even have one in this market. And that's something we need to change with education and within the profession. So right now, what I see is we have a less effective scene. One thing I think not enough people are talking about and thinking about, I'm up here today talking, some of you might know me, but on Twitter, think about how many thought leaders InfoSec has. A couple dozen people that you retweet all the time, and they say the same stupid shit all the time. You retweet it because they're really popular, and you saw them at a conference once, and that's cool. If we think about the number of InfoSec people we know, so the people that we think of as our community, the people that we think of as the leadership of InfoSec, that represents 1/1000th of InfoSec across the world. We have no real perspective on what InfoSec is. We only know InfoSec within our echo chamber of people we follow on Twitter and people that make it out to Converge and BSides Detroit. We are actually not a representative sample by any stretch of the imagination of how InfoSec is actually done in this world. And so when we think about who tells us what we should be doing and how we should do it, guess what? That's not actually representing what InfoSec is. It's representing the people that are talking the loudest about InfoSec. So the idea of the strong and wrong, the loud and whatever, we aren't actually thinking about everything outside of what we're talking about. We're thinking about what we're talking about. The profession overall, excellence, advancement, leadership, we are losing a lot of skills, a lot of training, a lot of, again, bar raising that we need in order for InfoSec to succeed. So overall, we talk about how how much we love InfoSec, how great our community is, how awesome everyone is. But are we really talking about like what's gonna make us not irrelevant in 5 years? Are we talking about if education's actually achieving the goals of what we need in 10 years? Do we actually think about down the line, or are we thinking about who we're impressing on Twitter tomorrow? And I think that's really kind of where we're at. We really are doing a disservice to ourselves. We're doing a disservice to the people we educate as professors. So what can we do to change this? Hey, Wolfgang. So in terms of the InfoSec community, and this is a personal anecdote, as you might be able to guess from the dialogue up here. So everyone knows about the plane hacking joke that went to like insane levels. I was literally at a client site. I was getting out of the elevator to go downstairs, and there was a newspaper, and it was like USA Today, and Chris Roberts is on the front cover, right? So we have this situation where, you know, yes, it wasn't a great idea. I think Chris has admitted that, but it took so much attention on the community in such a negative light. And guess what happened? Just over a month later, I had to sit in front of the federal government, begging them to basically say, researchers are great, we care, we're responsible, we're ethical, we're moral people that want to do the right thing and help people out and make people safe and make life better for people. And of course, while we were there, someone on the panel of the federal government said, didn't someone just hack a plane and aren't they a security researcher, and didn't they endanger the lives of people by making them plane tilt? Or whatever the weird verbiage was. And yeah, sideways, sorry, yeah, because that's how planes work. And so when we talk about InfoSec and we talk about like what are we doing to help ourselves, that's a really good example, and of course not intentional, not, you know, Chris wasn't doing that just to piss me off on that day. But we don't always really think when we use the phrase security researcher, security community, that implicates all of us. If you associate with a certain thing, guess what? The people that do things that are dumb or not the best move, that also impacts the rest of us. And some of us are trying to actually move things forward. We're not trying to talk about things just to impress people anymore. We're trying to actually fix things because everyone bitches about them, but no one does anything about them. And so the next time that, you know, you have an opportunity to talk to the press, you have an opportunity to talk to the FBI. Don't talk to the FBI first of all. But the next time you have an opportunity to talk to the press or present a presentation at a conference, really think about, like, is my presentation functionally, logically, reasonably a net win for what I'm talking about? Is it helping the community? Or is it helping me in this moment for this 50 minutes? I love Natalie Portman in that skit. Certainly, like, that joke was not the worst thing that anyone's ever done at InfoSec, right? Like, not even close. It got blown out of proportion, certainly, and it didn't help anything, certainly, but it's certainly not the worst thing anyone's ever said in InfoSec. Some of that might be happening right now, I don't know. But within the community, people will, whether it's on Twitter or whether it's when people are trying to fix laws and legislation, we will be held to my comments, to your comments, to the thoughts, writings, diatribes that people say on Twitter. It all counts, right? So is it counting in a positive way? Are we thinking about, you know, the short-term myopic effects of what we can say and do to, you know, have someone appreciate us as a researcher, or are we helping the information research community? Are you helping someone advance, you know, education? Are you helping someone advance certifications? What's the upside beyond right now? InfoSec's really good about bandwagon everything. So RSA 2014, we had the dual EC DRBG scandal with RSA conference, boycotting, you know, shadow conferences. And we go from like this really important, very pivotal moment for the InfoSec community to stand up and say what's right and boycott and do this thing together. And then this year, we got all pissed off because people couldn't have enough cleavage. I mean, that's really what it came down to. I mean, it is. And so what's a problem about that is if you boycott because of everything, you're boycotting because of nothing. And so this year, what's going to happen? Like, they're going to make some minute change and everyone's going to boycott again. Like, what is that? What is the litmus test for us as a community? So people as individuals, people as I'm a person, I am a human being. You can boycott whatever the hell you want, but don't say the InfoSec community is boycotting it, because that means something. Don't just lump everyone together because you're pissed off and you happen to be part of the InfoSec community. Huggate. Huggate was fantastic. Exactly. Awesome image. I love Google image search. That's the only reason I give talks. So the thing about Huggate is you have to step back and go, what is the actual value of what we're saying? And Huggate, like a lot of things in the InfoSec community, everyone is very holier than thou. Everyone feels like they understand humans and relationships and like these like inalienable like InfoSec rights. And then we bitch about them for 3 days and look like fucking morons. And so think about it in terms of the profession. So we have this community, we have like some of our brightest, most impassioned, most public figures in InfoSec on Twitter for 3, 4, 5 days arguing about when it's okay to hug a peer. And think about your other professions that you know about. Lawyers, doctors, architects, engineers. Have you ever seen a public diatribe and argument about something like hugging? People don't often think enough about like how we are representing ourselves, how we are talking about things. If someone actually looked at your Twitter feed outside of the fact that you have followers in InfoSec, what would people think objectively about what you're saying? Would they look at an argument where people are getting incensed over hugging and think like, man, those are some rational people that should be in my multi-billion-dollar company touching my firewalls. These seem like stable individuals. I will need a hug after this. Or a firm handshake. And that, I think the one thing that people don't, it's one of those things where agree to disagree is actually an option. You don't actually have to convince everyone about how you feel about hugging. You can just say, I don't like hugs. All right, okay, carrying on. The other problem is, and this comes up a couple times during this talk, this idea of the signal to noise, we are really, really bad on signal to noise. I'd actually unfollowed someone in InfoSec a couple days ago because they started posting stuff that was like very political, very religious, not related to InfoSec, and they post this stuff more often than they post InfoSec stuff. So I stopped following them. And they got really pissed off that I stopped following them, and they were like, oh, well, you don't appreciate my values and this. I just don't give a shit about that. That's not why I'm following you. I could follow 10,000 people on this topic if I wanted to follow people on this topic. I follow you because you're in InfoSec. I care what you have to say about InfoSec. If I unfollow you, it's because signal to noise isn't good enough for me. Like, why is that a bad thing? So we like to say a lot of things that get retweets. We like to say a lot of things that ruffle feathers and make people really upset about things because it's very interesting. So we say, talk in platitudes. We make straw man arguments. So we say things like, PCI is not security. Yeah, we know that. We've known that since PCI came out. Like, no one is saying anything important. Why are you still saying PCI is not security? No one thinks it's security. Or we say things like, oh, base 64 is not encryption. Developers are dumb. Your mom's dumb. This guy's dumb. We know base 64 is not encryption. Have you actually written a fucking white paper that you gave to developers to make life better for them? No, you just bitch about it on Twitter to get retweets from your InfoSec friends. Like, that is doing nothing for anyone, right? So it's okay to joke. It's okay to say things. It's okay to be sarcastic. But when you do it, don't just say it to someone and do nothing. Do something to help make it better so that next year you aren't making the same stupid joke. Next year you're making a new stupid joke. At least move like the bar a little bit higher so that we can make better jokes. And unfortunately, despite, and this one actually came up literally yesterday, which I made the slide just because of his tweet. We really are not important. Like, you realize how many people, like even DEF CON and Black Hat, I don't know what their numbers are anymore. Like, 40,000 people or something at Black Hat. Pick a number with, tens of thousands of people. That is still like just a tiny little part of InfoSec, right? So when we talk about like the hacking scene and the culture and, oh, like you want to take your CISSP, that's stupid. Let me take you to DEF CON and show you real hacking. No one cares. No one actually cares for employers. Do you think you go to interview for a job at random manufacturing company in middle of, USA, Kansas, and someone's going to be like, okay, so I see you on an InfoSec job. How many times do you go to DEF CON? No one asks that. I have been on so many InfoSec job interviews over the years, and absolutely no one cares what I do in the community. I mean, really, they don't. What they want to know is, do you know your job? Are you competent? Can you communicate well? Are you reliable? Just like every other job. And we spend so much time talking about how important the community is and how much better everything is because of us. The CISSP, tying in, the CISSP or any other certification and the amount of time that we spend beating up people that get them or care about them or want them is abhorrent. I mean, it really is. That last line down there is the truest thing I think I've ever written in my life. We literally are trashing people in our profession who are trying to make our profession a profession for trying to be professional. I mean, we really are. Take any other profession. There is some sort of board exam, certification, registration, organization you have to be a part of, or you aren't part of that profession. And for some reason with InfoSec, we feel that we are above needing a certification. We are above people that feel the need to have some sort of thing that says they're smart in InfoSec. There's always a minimum boundary. And for some reason, we keep saying, oh, the minimum boundary does not apply to us because we're hackers. No, it still applies to us. Again, companies don't care. They don't care that you set on IRC channels all day talking about really elite exploits. They want to know if you're going to come to work tomorrow. That's all they care about. So when you're thinking about what you're doing, and again, kind of getting back to the what are we actually functionally helping with this community that we keep talking about, when you say the CISSP sucks, were you like Wim Remus or Dave Lewis? Did you actually join ISC Squared's board to fix the CISSP? Did you actually try to actually improve anything? Or did you just go on Twitter and make a really funny statement so you get a lot of retweets tomorrow? That's really what it comes down to. There are people that do stuff in the background that don't make waves. They don't talk about it all the time. They just try to fix stuff. And they're not boisterous, they're not over the top, they're just doing work to fixing things. Meanwhile, 99% of people are just bitching about it. So the CISSP is bullshit, right? CISSP doesn't mean anything. 50,000 jobs requesting a CISSP, and at that time there were 60,000 CISSPs. That is not a diluted segment of too many CISSPs. That is not a diluted segment of, oh, certification's worthless. No, there were a lot of jobs. So when I hear people, and I hear this from people in support roles, I hear this from people still in school doing their undergrad, I hear people that want to laterally move from network engineering or server administration to InfoSec, and they're like, well, I'm not going to get a CISSP because it's bullshit. Well, you might have got a job that you wanted for the last 2 years, and instead of whining about it, you could have just got a CISSP and gotten a job, right? Or if you weren't going to get a CISSP, you could try to be part of the ISC Squared Council and fix the CISSP. But guess what? Both roads lead to a CISSP for 90% of jobs you want. InfoSec and education's a really tough thing right now. InfoSec education as a whole isn't living up to what it needs to be. I think I addressed that earlier briefly. The other part is there's a lot of people that still go, oh, education's not important, school's stupid, college is a waste of money, blah, 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 debt, loan, whatever, USA. The reality is education's almost always better than not. You might not pick the right education. You might not pick the right school. That's completely true. However, education 99% of the time is always a good choice. And it's not a good choice necessarily just because you learn InfoSec skills. I used to not do any public speaking. I would stay away from public speaking as much as I could growing up. I hated it. Until I had a forced public speaking class in college. And then I had a really good presentation that a lot of people congratulated me on. Said oh, you look so comfortable up there. And I'm just oh my God, I'm sweating. I'm freaking out. I'm probably shaking really bad. And it wasn't until that class that I was oh, okay, cool. And then after that class, I gave my first InfoSec presentation. Now that's not to say you couldn't do that in the reverse and give an InfoSec presentation and figure that out. But I had a business class that made me do a business plan for architecting a network. I had to do budgeting, I had to do a SWOT analysis, I had to tie together and call vendors and blah, 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 on and on. I literally do like 80% of that for my job today. Like that one project was what, like I could hire someone from EMU for the course I used that I don't think exists anymore, unfortunately, that I took at college. And you can go on with writing classes, writing papers over and over and over. Guess what pen test reports are, right? If you want to do, I do program development for companies. I write reports 80% of my time, right? Writing well, not having bad grammar, understanding how to command the English language is important. And guess where you get a lot of these bullshit skills at? College. So unfortunately, not many of us, or probably none of us, are Steve Jobs or Bill Gates. I know everyone likes to like wave around like, oh, not everyone goes to college, and some people are like multi-billionaires. Yeah, and some people like play basketball pretty good, but very few people like go to the NBA. Like just because like some people did, it doesn't mean it's going to work out for that bell curve. You're probably right in the middle of the bell curve, right? So if we just accept that, and then we say, okay, education's not great. When I was teaching at EMU, I tried to make it better for what I could make better. There are people like Brad Wilkerson who definitely improved that program over what it was. And so the question is, and Joe Eastman, who's probably somewhere in here, there are people that work really hard to actually improve education. And so are you able to improve it? Are you able to contribute to that? Are you able, once you get to industry, come back and teach for 2 semesters, fix some curriculum that sucks and isn't real life anymore, and actually make things a little bit better? Anyone burn out yet from bitching? No? Good. InfoSec professionals right now, and kind of tying back to the education part, InfoSec professionals right now, we're losing a lot of the variety that made InfoSec professionals like really, really, really good. Not just like writing well and whatever, but people want to be InfoSec professionals so bad that they're skipping like 10 important steps in their career. Be a sysadmin for 2 years. Be a developer for a year. Build a startup after you get out of college for a couple years before it burns up and you have a lot of debt. Do these things, speaking as someone that did that, do these things because when you get into businesses and you're doing a pen test, you're not going to understand what you need to understand. You might say like, oh, network segmentation, these fucking network admins aren't segmenting their network. Do you know how hard it is to segment like 20 years of technical debt and actually fix a network to segment it in the right way when you go to do a pen test and laugh because you can do past the hash? Like, you don't understand the business. You don't understand the problems. You don't understand what it's like to be a sysadmin. You don't understand what it's like to be a net admin. You don't understand why SQL injection still happens. You just know you can break it. You know that you can find the bugs. And that's not helping your clients. That's not helping you. So, don't be so quick to be part of InfoSec as a profession. Be part of, build your skills up, build your knowledge, build your relationships in other industries, because unless you do, and if all you do is go to school, get a 4-year degree on IA or whatever, come to BSides Converge, hang out in MySec, you are missing like 85% of your career. And it's really hard to get that back once you get going. If you don't spend the time ahead of time, you're going to be taking jobs when you're 35 and 40 years old to learn the things you should have learned 20 years ago. So don't rush into it if you still are kind of at that point in your career. And if you are like already in InfoSec and you never did some of those steps, maybe there's some ways that you can kind of add to it. Is POSHEC 2.0 out yet? Does anyone know? I think MWJ mentioned. Like, let's say you don't know programming. Let's say you don't know PowerShell or Python, and you want to be a developer. You won't know developer problems until you're a developer, quite frankly. So find a project to work on, even if it's a couple lines of code here and there. And the unfortunate part is, even really great people like Jeremiah, we are way past the point that, everyone says like, oh, there's going to be a turning point in InfoSec. We're going to get regulated. These things have happened for a long time. They're just not like blunt, right? They're very subtle in some cases. And so when we look at this idea where Jeremiah's like, next step, professionalization. No, we've been professionalized for a long time. We just have people that are holdouts, right? And so this, if anyone's a Springsteen fan, like, singing Glory Days and like, just going, yeah, everything's so great still, and I'm a hacker and this and that. The reality is, cars are not cars anymore. They're not automobiles, right? They're giant 2-ton computers with really cool emblems sometimes, like Tesla. And you can control them from Bluetooth, you can control Wi-Fi networks, you have mobile applications that can start them and stop them and do X, Y, and Z. All the research that Chris Valasek and Charlie Miller have done, and we'll have more at Black Hat for. Like, this is serious business, right? Insulin pumps. Jay Radcliffe, who's one of my coworkers at Rapid7, he has shown multiple times that these devices can be very quickly and remotely configured to deliver a lethal dose of insulin, right? So I know people like want to keep things like loose and cool and fun and hackery, but at the same time, the kind of responsibility we have as a community, as professionals, is really serious, really, really serious. One area that I do a lot of, and actually have my a talk at DEF CON giving about IoT baby monitors, right? How many people have kids or on the way? So a fun fact, I don't think I've really announced this very publicly. I actually have my first kid on the way. And thank you. Yeah, I will stop going to talks. So I kind of knowing that I was going to have a kid soon, I made IoT baby monitors my research project for like the last 5 months. And it's terrifying. Like, it really is. Really, 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 really terrifying what's out there. InfoSec isn't getting less important. Our problems, our responsibility is not dwindling. We are actually taking on more responsibility. We are taking on more serious life and death consequences. The simple things that we used to do for research projects are no longer simple. Yes, we might get to a point where there's an InfoSec certification for developers. Okay. Why is that such a bad thing? We see breaches like every 3 minutes, right? There was UCLA 4 million records stolen or something like 2 days ago. You don't think everyone's healthcare data is worth it? You don't think like having someone sit down for a quick exam just to say that they actually understand why SQL injection is bad is unheard of? Like, why would we do that? And then there's Mudge. Mudge is like my InfoSec superhero. Like, Mudge to me is everything I will never be and everything I wish I could be. So we spent a lot of time putting people on pedestals in InfoSec. We spent a lot of time, like, someone did a project like 20 years ago, and they have 20,000 Twitter followers because of that project they did 20 years ago. Subsequently, they've done nothing. They have done absolutely nothing for our industry. They have done nothing to make us better. They have done nothing to contribute. They're just milking their past history and past successes. Then there are people like Mudge. Mudge was one of the founders of The Loft. You guys know Loftcracked and some of these other tools they made. But just the fact that Loft was a thing, like that by itself was a huge important part of the InfoSec community and history. Cult of the Dead Cow, another hugely influential, very important part of our history as a community. Mudge and the rest of the Loft guys testified for a Senate committee back in the day on the dangers to the internet. More recently, after a lot of Loft guys kind of broke out and I actually made a professional endeavor called At Stake. A lot of great guys have spun out since then to like Veracode and ISEC Partners and some other places. Then we have the DARPA Cyber Fast Track. Mudge was actually able to get like, I don't know if it was millions of dollars, but it was a lot of money over a couple years for security researchers to build projects through DARPA government funding. Like, Mudge, like, in terms of like the ultimate hack, like, Mudge got the government to just hand out piles of money to researchers who would have done the research for free anyways, right? This guy up there is the same guy down there. And we spend so much time, wanting, I think back, I used to be like a skater kid, right? And we spend so much time like wanting to keep our culture and wanting to keep like these ideas about who we have to be and who we have to look like. And it's no different from any other community that you look at and you're like, man, it's kind of pathetic. Like, why are they trying so hard to be that thing? Why aren't they just being themselves? And Mudge literally was like the cool, long-haired, like fuzzy-faced hacker guy. And now he's in a government photo in front of an American flag. Right? It's okay to break out of the community to help the community. You don't have to be like deeply involved in the community to actually benefit us all. And more recently, Google ATAP, which was just announced a couple weeks ago, really interesting crypto project. And perhaps if he can pull it off, which if anyone can, Mudge can, basically like a cyber underwriter's laboratory, right? We talk all the time. So build securely, like one of the things that people bring up more often than when we talk about build securely is like, you guys could be like the cyber underwriters laboratories. And we're like, we don't want that. So much liability, so much overhead, so much legal, so much bullshit. Mudge is going to take that on for us. He's going to try to do that in the government at the highest level we could ever go. And then it'll trickle down to the rest of us and we can leverage that. Mudge knows exactly what he's doing and what he's been doing. And he's done all of this stuff in 44 years. Right? It makes me feel completely irrelevant for everything I've ever done looking at a bio like that. But that's something to shoot for. So when I hear people still talking about Kevin Mitnick and how cool Kevin Mitnick is and how great Kevin Mitnick is, holy shit, he actually did nothing for any of you. Like, he did absolutely nothing for any of you except make more laws. He did nothing, right? If you think being a criminal is like the most noble thing you can do for the InfoSec community, you really aren't understanding what a community is supposed to be. We're not supposed to be like a band of like thieves. We're supposed to be people that are trying to help people, that are trying to fix problems, that are trying to build a community in the right ways. Dave, you're too good to me. So speaking of InfoSec and talking about conferences and what we should and shouldn't do, you know, and there's a few people in here specifically that I know try, like Wolfgang, try really hard not to just talk at InfoSec conferences. It's actually really hard not to talk at InfoSec conferences because you go to InfoSec conferences, all your friends are there, all the people that understand you are there, all the people that already get like the base level concepts are already there. When you go to a developer conference and you're one talk out of 100 and the only security talk there, and a lot of these people don't know a lot about security. They don't know about CSRF. They don't know about cross-site scripting still maybe. There's a lot of fundamental knowledge that you as InfoSec professionals and hobbyists and researchers that you guys get that they do not get. And it's a lot harder to talk to that audience. It's a lot harder to make inroads with that organization community. And so I tried really hard in 2014 to get out of the chamber, and I still failed. I mean, I really did fail. Like, I tried, I thought, I planned, but the thing is, there are so many InfoSec events. And it's so easy to get into an InfoSec event when you are an InfoSec person. They know you. Oh yeah, I love that guy's talk at that last conference, or her talk was so good, like, let's bring her to this event. It's very easy to be like a catalyst where one talk platforms you to like 30 more talks. And to say like, okay, I could go to like 30 InfoSec events where all my peers are that I can really like impress and show off my skills and make them proud of me. Or I can do the hard thing where no one knows about me, no one cares who I am, no one cares about the InfoSec community, and actually educate the very people that we talk about how bad they are at their job all day. And that's a really hard decision to make, and that's a decision that's important. You know, technically speaking, it's the right thing to do. It's the right thing to share your knowledge, make people better, and raise the bar. But we spend a lot of time talking about how great we are, and not raising the bar, and talking about how much we love each other. We need to have other people go, man, InfoSec people are like super helpful, and they weren't condescending like my last like coworker was. Maybe I should go to InfoSec events, right? So here's a top 5 list. If we stop arguing about dumb topics, we immediately raise the bar for what we consider as our profession, right? If we start, you know, and there are certain people that conversations will always go off the rails, right? And it doesn't matter who you are, or how hard you try. There's always going to be a troll. There's always going to be someone that's like poking your buttons because they're having a bad day. Like, those things are going to happen, right? But we really have to sit back and go, are we having a conversation that's productive to us as a profession? The community is driving the profession, or at least that's what we want to make it do, right? We want it to drive the profession. So if we are not driving in a straight line for our own profession, what do we think is going to happen? The things that Mudge did to have his own Wikipedia page, right, is not because he got a lot of retweets. It's because he worked really, really hard behind the scenes, not talking about it on Twitter. He just did work. He did a lot of hard work. He made a lot of really important friends for InfoSec. And it wasn't broadcast all over at conferences. He didn't go to every BSides event and talk about how great the stuff he was about to do was going to be. He actually just did it. And then came back and was like, hey, I did this thing. Okay. And then he goes on to the next huge thing that will be, impactful for the rest of us. And this is a term that I know won't maybe go over super well, but like we really have a participation trophy InfoSec culture right now. Everyone is doing a great job. Everyone's great. You're great, you're great, you're great. Everyone's just so great. Let's get back to a part where we cultivate people that want to be great, and we laud the people that are great. We laud the people that have made a contribution, that have produced something, that actually like made an initiative, built a project, ran a team, right? I think every single conference, as long as it's like more than 3 speakers, every conference should have a one-on-one track. I think that's the best idea that has ever come out of the community because it's a place for people to grow. We aren't throwing people in the deep end just to waste a time slot on our schedule. We're letting people say, I've never done this, or like I have this idea that's not really fully baked yet, or this is an idea for a project, let me tell you about it. But we spend a lot of time throwing people in and going, oh, this person gave a talk there, I guess we'll let them in here. But they don't really have the experience yet. I think every conference would benefit a lot from that. BSides is a great example, kind of that general mentality. And so education, certification, let's try not to pick on people with certifications, maybe. If someone says like, oh, I'm going to go sit for my CISSP, say, hey, congratulations. And that's it. Don't say it's not going to help them. Don't say that it's not a good cert. Don't say it's a waste of money. Congratulate them or just shut the fuck up. Because you're not helping them get a job. Similarly, if you're in a position that you can help education, not everyone is, there are opportunities. Henry Ford Community College, I sit on, there's like a CIS committee. And every, I think, 6 months, or is it quarter or 6 months? Quarter or 6 months, I sit on a committee with Henry Ford Community College's leadership for their curriculum. And I tell them, like, how things are. I tell them, that's not relevant anymore. That's worthless. Don't teach that. Or, why aren't you teaching this? This is hugely important. So that's a small thing I'm doing now that I don't teach. But, if there are opportunities, whether you're a student, whether you're a lecturer, whether you're a full-time professor, or whether it's just your alma mater, when was the last time you sent an email to your old professor and say, hey, I've been in InfoSec for like 5 years now, and I see you guys have an IA program. I'm looking at the curriculum online, and it's really not meeting up to the standards we need. Could I talk to you more about that? It's going to take work, right? Like you have to step out of that comfort zone and be like, I'm going to go to people that don't get me, that don't get the industry, and try to tell them in a very functional, passionate, but friendly way that they're doing things wrong, and I can help. So Zach Lanier's talk last year at Converge was fantastic for me. I really got a lot out of it because it was somewhat nostalgic, but it was also, it was kind of hard hitting and, kind of the Kevin Mitnick point, and this isn't a literal thing, so please no one try to get me like swatted. Kill your InfoSec darlings. Don't just love people because they're in InfoSec and they did that thing that one time. The best thing you can do for anyone in your life is to hold them to a high standard. No teacher you ever had in school that you really appreciated ever was just like, yep, you get an A just because you came to class. Like, you remember the people as a teacher that challenged you. You remember the people that made you think, made you contemplate, made you evaluate what you thought you knew, right? And we're doing nothing for these people that we put on a pedestal by just leaving them on the pedestal. We need to knock people down once in a while and say, that was a great project you did 5 years ago. What are you working on right now? What could you do for us? I know of a project, I know about Build It Securely and Mark Stanislav, and, they're always looking for new people that know embedded security, or they need people that know cloud security. Why don't you talk to him? Maybe you guys could help, work together and do something. We need to bring people up. We need people not to just coast on their reputation. We need people to keep going. I think one of the best people, other than Mudge, kind of a different area, Dave Kennedy is probably one of the best people you can aspire to if you're not aspiring to Mudge already. And for different reasons, right? Like, Mudge is like this super hacker gone, government anything to make things better for hackers. And Dave Kennedy is the guy that like puts out a project like daily, it seems like. Did anyone happen to notice that after 15 years, Microsoft effectively like helped out the pass the hash situation by releasing what they call LAPS, local admin password solution or something? About 6 months before that, Dave Kennedy put out Ships. And Ships basically does the same thing as LAPS, more or less. You can actually change things by releasing projects. And Dave Kennedy, whether it's the way he represents the community overall, the kinds of presentations he gives, the projects he puts out, he is constantly doing something. He's working really, really, really hard. Every conference I've ever been at with Dave that we've spoken at, like I've seen it in like Austin and other places, he is always on his laptop, in between talks, on a call, working, writing code, pushing commits, whatever. He is working nonstop. And I don't think a lot of the people that we're like, again, putting on a pedestal is working nearly that hard as Dave is. And kind of coming back to some ideas we talked about really early, the scene overall is not super united. And being united isn't about agreeing on everything. It's when you're saying something, are you benefiting everyone in some generic way? Are you saying things just to hurt people? Are you saying things just to make people feel bad? Are you saying things just to antagonize people? Right? So think about the impact, think about what it represents. All right, so that's kind of like my general InfoSec. This part's more just, if you're from Michigan and you're part of this Michigan community, that's slightly more towards you. And then I promise you the end of this talk is a super high note. Everyone's going to feel great, hopefully, at the end. So BSides Detroit, year one, this was me talking. I had about 30 pounds lighter there and a slightly better tan and more hair. So things haven't been great the last 4 years, basically what I'm trying to say. BSides for me, BSides Detroit, year one, so 2011, the last RubyCon, so the last Southeast Michigan, basically the last not GrrCon, more or less, is the last RubyCon was 2003. So there had been 8 years where there was not a security conference that I like put even a grain of salt into. Like, there were like, and not saying anything bad because I think these are great orgs and I'm part of them, but like, you have your ISSAs, your InfraGuards and stuff, but there wasn't like a community, a scene conference. We lost that when RubyCon died. BSides was a huge thing because all of us are in this room today because of BSides 1, effectively. All, 60, 70 people on the MySec MIRC channel, or IRC channel. I just said MIRC, holy shit. IRC channel are there because of this event, right? Converge exists because of this first event. It was a transformative thing for our community, and I think we have a long ways to go still. Which brings me to MySecs. And I had alluded that there would be a slide on this, so shock and awe. So originally MySec as a channel was basically supposed to be kind of like the, hey, BSides is great. We have this new thing. We haven't had a community really together in 8 years. Why don't we kind of stay in touch and chat and hang out and whatever? And so that was kind of the goal. So, I'm an IRC person, and just like I'm pretty much a Twitter person, I lurk, and if I have something to say, I say it, and if I don't have anything to say, I kind of like look and say, oh, is anyone talking about anything cool? Like, is there anything I want to chat about? No, okay. And I just kind of walk away. Like, that's like 90% of what I do on IRC and Twitter. So what I noticed was a lot of the content was not anywhere close to InfoSec, or even technology for that matter. So what I did, I literally picked a random week. I promise you it was completely random. 32% of the conversation on the channel, there were, I think, 1,300 messages in 1 week. Of the 1,300 messages, basically a third, were somewhat quasi, and I do mean somewhat quasi, related to InfoSec or general technology. So that means 2/3 of the conversation had nothing to do with InfoSec, nothing to do with general technology. Half of that 32% was one thread where someone got a job and everyone was like, hey, congratulations, job, it was like very compressed, very specific. So that's kind of an outlier in the grand scheme of that statistic. we have this opportunity where we have 60, 70 people at any given time to talk about InfoSec. We don't take advantage of it. We started something to communicate in between these yearly events here. We have people, and you can look at the history and you'll find this to be true. You can have people say, hey, does anyone know about this? And then all of a sudden there's a flood of other bullshit that comes through. Oh, I'm going to work on this project. Does anyone know about this? Flood of bullshit comes through. And so when people say like, oh, well, if you want to talk about security, talk about something. People do talk about something, and it gets blown away by stuff that's not relevant. And it's an IRC channel. It's not a mailing list. You can't just be like, oh, mute the thread. No, that's not how it works. It's a flood of information. And either you're contributing to MySec, or you're contributing to MySecs, basically. And MySecs is literally both a typo that we all make all the time. Everyone's made it at some point. But it's also like there's been a lot of weird content about like people's dating, sex lives, and weird other shit that's definitely not related to security. And the thing is, and most importantly, as you probably could tell from this presentation with a lot of vitriol, I don't give a fuck that you're talking about sex. What I care about is that you're not talking about InfoSec. Like, that's what I care about. Facebook, Twitter, Reddit, Snapchat, WhatsApp, I don't know, pick something. There are plenty of ways to talk about stuff not relevant to InfoSec, right? MySec exists to talk about InfoSec, specifically in Michigan, and people in Michigan or around Michigan or from Michigan. So it's cool that you talk about other things, but it would be great that when someone says, like I brought up, it was probably 2 months ago now, I brought up, hey, I'm working on password cracking. Does anyone know X, Y, or Z? And as soon as I said that, I got responses, but they had nothing to do with my question. And it was all about like going out to the bar later or something. So people are trying to talk, and the thing is, a lot of people are lurkers in the MySec channel. If you look at the top talkers on the channel, there's about 5 or 6 people that talk all the time. And of those 5 or 6 people, about 2 of those people are talking about InfoSec all the time when they talk, and everyone else is talking about something else. So you have a really big disparity signal to noise. And we've got to be careful of that. And, I've never like said, hey, like stop talking about sex. I've never like kicked someone out of the room. I don't want to do that. I probably will never do that. I'm just asking to self-moderate. That's the best way a community can run, is self-moderation, right? So the next time you're going to post in MySec, or the next time, and not even MySec, just in general, if you're in a certain community site, a forum, a chat channel, just think about like, am I contributing to the reason this channel exists? It's just that simple. Then there's the drama llama of MySec and ArbSec. So ArbSec, if some of you don't know, is basically a Ann Arbor-based security meetup, like a CitySec event that's been going on for a long time. And really early on, I would say like probably 3 years ago even, maybe 4, there was a lot of early drama between MySec people and ArbSec people, which is so funny because there's basically a huge overlap. But certain people thought that MySec people, or people that would associate with MySec generally, were being spoken down to, condescended to, that there was an elitist attitude with ArbSec. Similarly, because everyone has to be pissed off at everyone all the time, there were ArbSec people that said like, oh, well, MySec people, they're just pissed off because like they're actually posers, they don't actually get InfoSec, they're not here to learn, they're just here to hang out. So we have this issue where in any community, or communities, in any subsect, there will always be people that feel let down. There will always be people that feel slighted. There will always be people that feel like they're not being treated well. And that's unfortunate, but that's a reality. And in this case, it's a very simple thing where MySec in general was all about, from day one, building a community that did not exist. So, all the work that Wolfgang and Ryan and Matt have put together in Twitter and in mailing lists and YouTube and meetups and all these other huge components of building a community, those things were all about bringing people together because there wasn't a community at all. A lot of the people in that group were either maybe technical people that were like maybe a sysadmin, or maybe a network engineer, or maybe a developer, but not necessarily an InfoSec often. Some of them were trying to transition, some of them were trying to get into InfoSec, and a lot of corporate people, a lot of people that had like deep corporate roots and had been in major companies doing a lot of major things. ArbSec, however, was completely at that time around the purpose of hugely deeply technical knowledge transfer. It was all about like exploitation talks. It was all about like hacking this, hacking that, breaking this, research paper, blah, blah, blah. A lot of academics, a lot of researchers, a lot of knee-deep 24/7 security people. Two different audiences, two different perspectives, and anytime you mix two things together that don't go together, oil and water, yeah, you're going to have some problems. And I think luckily over the last 3 to 4 years, I think all that kind of bad blood's gone away. But the point here is there is so much, and when you look at the schedule for BSides and Converge, there is so much going on here. And we've also lost a lot. We've lost a lot of community. We've actually kind of broken some things apart that used to be really strong. So 14 years ago, Detroit was one of the best offensive security research areas in the US, easily. We had some of the best security researcher talent in the US, period. If you look at the schedule today, if you look at the schedule the last 2 days, we have gone like way over to the side of soft skills and management and blue team. And you know what? We probably dominate those things now, but we've lost almost all of our offensive security. And so just like everything else in life, we should have more moderation. And I think there's a couple reasons. One is a lot of offensive security is really, 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 really hard. To do a lot of the work that it takes to do offensive security, you need deep computer science skills, which we've already talked about the inadequacies of information assurance type degrees right now. You're not learning necessarily deep technical skills. You're learning a lot more high-level knowledge to functionally do jobs. You're not learning the basis of stuff. And I think that's one catalyst of why we've lost a lot of offensive security. The other thing is, when I'm talking about ARBSec and MISEC, when I'm talking about kind of a separation of powers and content, U of M is still one of the best comp sci research departments in the world, certainly in the US, but also in the world. And I don't know the last time I really hung out with a researcher at Michigan that actually came to a MISEC meeting. I think, geographically, some of these places, people came in from, before Jackson MISEC stuff happened, a lot of people would come in from Jackson. A lot of people would come in from the west side of the state. People would come from the north and the south and from Toledo and everywhere else. So it's not a geographic problem. I assure you it's not that. It's a perception problem of community. And there's also this other part where we have MISEC, ARBSec, Michigan 2600, which some of you probably don't even exist and has existed for like 20 years. ISSA, ISACA, OWASP, HGCIA, InfraGard, ISC Square. We have all these groups, all these disparate groups of community. We have all these different mindsets. We have all these different perspectives, all these different skill sets and educational backgrounds, corporate backgrounds, whatever. We have all these things, and almost never do any of these groups interact, do anything, commingle, transfer knowledge, build communities that are bigger than themselves. And I think that's bad. So it's really, really, really easy for me to stand up here and just bitch the whole time. And as my thesis kind of goes, like, we should do something about stuff that we're not happy with. So what I'm proposing to get done is what I'm dubbing, which might be a stolen name, I just kind of ran with it, the Michigan Information Security Council, or MISC. So it goes for, it's funny because it's miscellaneous and it kind of involves a lot of stuff, so that's cool. So the goal of MISC is basically, we have a ton of InfoSec people. We have no shortage of InfoSec people, right? And we have no shortage of groups. We have no shortage of education programs. We have no shortage of InfoSec companies. We have a really, really big community in Michigan. What we don't really have is any kind of idea what the hell anyone's doing. We don't know what ISSA is doing unless you're an ISA. We don't know what MI 2600 is doing because about 2 of you have ever been to a meeting in your life. We don't necessarily know what InfraGard's doing. ARBSec could be a mystery to all of you. You might have heard about it for the first time today. So basically I have 2 goals, and we'll see if these go up in flames or actually happen. But by the end of 2015, what I'm proposing to pull together is basically a report. And this report would basically be the state of affairs for the Michigan security community. So every presentation given at a conference or an event related to information security in the state, so who gave it, where they gave it, when they gave it, what the content was, what topic it fell into. Was it red team? Was it blue team? Was it purple team? Was it management? Was it soft skills? Was it developer focused? On and on and on. What organizations exist? Who are the people that are functionally giving the talks? Do we have like 2 people that give 90% of the talks in Michigan? Maybe, it's possible. What companies are represented? How many of your employers are supporting security, right? How many of you are security people at security companies or security people for security teams? And some of your employers are like, nah, I don't really see the benefit of you going to a conference. Well, guess what? Your competitor has 80% of the security team go to every single conference and speak. We don't have data on what we're doing, who's doing it, when we're doing it, how we're doing it. And what that's important for is we can't make things better unless we understand problems. And we can't understand trends unless we have data behind them. So that's kind of part one, is basically this: get data, organize data, pull it together, get kind of results. The second part, which again is going to take some time, is basically create a council, the actual name of this thing, which is someone from ISEC, someone from ISSA, ARPSEC, blah, 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 someone from EMU, someone from Ferris, someone from Wayne State, wherever there's a security program, IA program, whatever program, twice a year, organize a time to, one, go over this report so you can look at the trends together. You can evaluate why 80% of the talks are about blue team and where the red teamers went. You can talk about, as a company, who in your company is speaking and what are they speaking about, and what needs do you see in the next 5 years for employees. We don't have a lot of good data, and I think once we have the data pulled together, we'll be able to talk about it intelligently. CFP processes. Are you all, at all your different conferences that you might organize, or events or meetups, are you having the same people speak 5 times about the same topic within 30 square miles? Is that really helping? Is that making things better? Or what if you sat down once a year and said, hey, ISSA, I see that 9 out of your last 10 talks were about blue team. We had some really good red team talks across the state or up north. Would you like to have someone come down? I will introduce you, right? We're really disorganized, and I think we can do a lot better. So some of these ideas are simple data. What kind of talks are people giving in Michigan? Do people have interests that are not being addressed because they don't know anyone that's doing it? Employers, universities, do you have, do EMU students represent 90% of the students that give talks at conferences? Maybe, I don't know. Women in InfoSec, there are certain communities that are better than others. We know that for sure, right? We certainly know that. Self-conference, which my friend Erica Carlson put together, they had something like 68 or 70% women speaking at self-conference for developers. We're not a drop in the bucket of that number for InfoSec here. And that's not we should like pad numbers or more students should speak and less professionals. We just have to know. We just have to know so we can say like, okay, what are we missing here? Because we're missing something that we're not being inclusive enough. Again, we don't know unless we look. CTF competitions, MySec runs CTF things all the time. Do ISSA people know about that? Do ARPSEC people know about that? Do 2600 people know about that? So there's a lot to do, and I'll probably be talking to some of you coming up. But the point of this is I'm looking to do the administrative part. And I'm looking to put the data together, show the report, and say, here's what we have. The council will not involve me as a actual person. I just want to organize the people. The one thing I found out doing Build Securely is you don't necessarily need people that are in the weeds and administrative. You sometimes just need someone to put like people in a room. I want to be the person that puts people in a room. I want to pull together the educators. I want to pull together the InfoSec companies. I want to pull together security teams. I want to pull together conferences and meetups. Put everyone in a room, give them data, and say, let's get some outcomes from this. For the next 6 months, where do we want to go? To the next year, where do we want to go? I don't know of any state certainly doing this. I don't know of any even half of a state doing this. This would be really unique for the state of Michigan. I think this would be something that we could publish through all the channels that I just talked about, and I think it would represent the information security community well here. So getting back to like, let's make things better. It may work, it may not, but I'll at least try, and I'm sure some of you will help try along with me. So it's been a real pleasure to be able to speak today. It's I've never keynoted an event, so that's cool by itself. But at the same time, I think this is like a really good call to arms, a way to finish off, which is, in 5 years, what are you going to do that's going to make these awesome people allow you to speak in front of them for 50 minutes? Are you going to contribute something that will make them go, yeah, they should be up there speaking at our 10-year keynote? So I think there's a lot of value in what we talked about today, and certainly up for discussion for many of the points I raised. But I hope that the Security Council idea will kind of take take hold, and we'll see what comes out of it. But thank you for your time today, and have a great BSides.